Sailing the seven seas. Yeah, I chose a really bad pun to describe 21st century learning. Disclaimer, although this is a seven seas type thing, I'm not a total expert. I'm not a rock star teacher. I'm not a guru. I'm not some guy who has it all figured out. I'm just a teacher. And it's not always pretty in my classroom. In fact, sometimes it's actually been pretty bad. I have projects that fail on me, ones that sounded really good in my head and then turned out to be total bombs. I have lessons that totally tanked on me, ones where the students were confused or disengaged, and I wish I could have them back. I haven't won any awards. I've never been a teacher of the year. I don't have 51 rules to fix my classroom, and I've never had Oprah come and ask me to talk about my 51 rules either. I've never donned a leather jacket and inspired dangerous minds and had a movie made about me. I don't always stand and deliver. In fact, a lot of times I'm sitting down with small groups or one-on-one with students. In other words, I'm not a rock star, not a rock star teacher at all. But what if I was? What if I was a rock star teacher? What would that actually look like? I had this conversation on Twitter with a few people. I'm going to share a couple of our tweets. Rockstar teacher chucks the half-used water bottle at the students after he's done with direct instruction. Rockstar teacher demands only the green M&Ms are left in the staff lounge. Rockstar teacher trashes the classroom and has the agent pay for the repairs. Rockstar teacher assumes the fight breaking out in the classroom is simply a lively mosh pit. Rockstar teacher constantly dives at the front row and is consistently disappointed when the kindergartners won't crowd surf him. I want to mention this concept of technology and how we use it, because for all the talk of digital natives, and the reality is students are native to a digital world, a world shaped by this technology. Digital natives are oftentimes not good digital citizens. They haven't seen the full capacity of what technology can do, both good and bad. And oftentimes I've found that they are consumers rather than creators with technology. I took a survey of students. Question number one was, how many of you have computers at home? 10 of them did. How many of you have an iPod Touch at home? 25 out of 30 had an iPod Touch. The next question was, how many of you have used your iPod Touch for viewing videos? 25 out of 25. They all do that. How about music? 25 out of 25. How many of you have created a video? 2. How many of you have edited the video that you created? 0. How many of you have used the voice apps to create any kind of a podcast and post it online? 0. How many of you use any blogging apps? 0. What I found is that these were media devices used almost entirely to consume media first, and then sometimes to be on things like Facebook and interact socially. So I realized there has to be this paradigm shift about how we use technology. And a part of the problem is that schools haven't done a great job in using technology in a way that lets students be creative, in a way that lets students harness the full capacity of what technology offers. Oftentimes, students use technology in a consumeristic way at school. It's just that what they're consuming is learning, and I think that's a problem. And so what I'm suggesting right now is that there are two visions for educational technology, two visions for how we use it in the classroom. The first way is that we can use it to dehumanize. Students can work by themselves, they can work in isolation, and in the process they will experience very little human interaction. And I think a lot of the media, and in fact many people within the field of education, have been fooled by the con artists who believe that a little whiteboard lesson is using technology to its fullest potential. And it's not. It's not transformative, it's not powerful, and it's simply another way that students consume it. Khan videos are nice, but they're essentially tutorials. In many cases, what's being put out in the name of innovative education is simply a worksheet online. Our other option is that we can use it to humanize. We can allow students to create videos and podcasts, documentaries, blogs, collaborate with Google Drive, and interact socially with people, and not just socially, but participating in projects across the world. It's up to us as teachers to propose which way technology is going to work. And for me, I think the goal needs to be to humanize. I think the goal needs to be that we use technology in a way that we're not replacing teachers, that we're not simply giving new worksheets with a digital spin, but that we're actually harnessing the power of technology for its creative potential. And so here are the 7 C's of a more humanized, authentic, meaningful, use whatever word you want to describe 21st century pedagogy. The first one is connect. I want students to use technology to connect with one another. They need to connect with each other. They need to connect ideas. They need to understand the connections between relationships and systems. The modernist idea, starting with the Enlightenment, was that everything exists in a silo. They're nice, tidy little categories. And although that kind of philosophy had some benefits, and we don't want to lose it entirely, the reality is knowledge is never that easy. Silos look pretty. But I'm suggesting that maybe there's something better, something more natural. And this concept, this metaphor that I'm going for, isn't a new one. It's one that I've seen used a lot, and it's the concept of a rhizome. It's the notion that everything is interrelated. Everything exists in webs. It's connective thinking. And students need to understand scientific systems that interact, social systems that interact, human systems that interact, political and economic and geographic systems. And the problem is, too often in school, we go back to the silos. We say, this is the standard, boom, this is the objective, boom, learn it. And we fail to help students see the way things are connected, the way they are connected to the concepts, the way the concepts are connected to each other, the way the skills connect to the concepts. We need connective thinking. And technology needs to be a part of how we accomplish that. And this can be everything from creating concept maps to tagging blogs and seeing how they're interconnected to each other. It can be simple things. In my class, I teach ELL, so we have to do vocabulary. They have to have a vocabulary place. But the old school way is the Marzano vocabulary, where they fill out little sheets. And it's okay, but it treats language as if it's in isolation. What I found was that students thrived. They did really, really well when we switched to vocabulary tumblers, because then they could tag them, they could share them, and the tags they used became connections between words. So instead of the dictionary being linear, which it still was, you could still alphabetize it, you could still search it, it was also connective. You could search one word, click on one of the synonyms that you created, and it sent you to all of the other words. And it became a simple way of helping students see that language is by nature connective. The second thing is for us to have students create. Students need to use technology to make something that matters. And I think it's critical that we see both sides to that. First, that students are making something. That making is the best word I could come up with for create. It can be an idea. It can be a solution. It doesn't have to be a product. The second part is that it has to matter. It has to be meaningful. Creativity just randomly doesn't excite students. It doesn't ignite their passion in the way that something meaningful does. An example of this is we do multimedia literary reviews, and students participate in lit circles that are both online and offline, and they do reading groups, and they annotate passages with Google Docs, and they use the technology to make sense of the book, but then they also present their review in both a text-based and a multimedia-based way. So the text-based way might be a Goodreads passage, it might be a review on Amazon.com, it might be a blog post that they do. But the second part, the multimedia part, is where they get to make sense of the book in a creative way. And so this student chose something traditional. The book was Night, and she chose to paint panels of the book, memorable things. She chose 9 different things. And then she chose to annotate it with music and with quotes from the book. And it was a creative endeavor because she was making sense of the book. She had themes and she had plot and she had all of it, but she chose visuals, music, and parts from the book. And I thought it was interesting because I expected students to create videos where they sat down and they talked, but her video was totally different. It didn't fit my paradigm of what a video should be. When I think about creativity, there are some questions that come to mind. Can students make something new? Can students improve what's already there? Can students use things in unusual ways? An example of this was a metaphor that a student did of masks. And I find this interesting because he came to me and he said, I want to borrow the video camera, I want to borrow the projector, and I want to borrow the board. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I do. And then I'm going to videotape it. And I thought, I have no idea why you're doing this. And what he created was very low-tech, but very high-tech at the same time. And one of the lessons that I learned with creativity is that sometimes less is more. Sometimes you give students a lot of freedom, but not necessarily a lot of choices. Sometimes students are limited in their technology choices. This was at a time when we only had 4 computers in the classroom. But the student had the time to develop something that was different. I want to see students use technology to collaborate. The following is a collaboration grid that we use, and this is where students choose the tools themselves to fit the task. Now, I'm not saying that this is completely ideal. Some people would say that, for example, an online diagram is more multimedia than a presentation because there's less text or this or that. That's fine. It's up to you. But we go from text-based to multimedia, and then from collaborating being more on the communicating side to the creating side. And I want to point out, notice we've already mentioned creating and now we're going to collaborating. We'll later on mention communicating. And again, it's this idea of connective thinking. Communicating, creating, and collaborating, they're interrelated. They're not isolated concepts.